Hey everyone, welcome back to Professor's Play, the show where you come to get just a pixel of deep thinking with your mostly nonsensical video game discussions. This is our third series on Professor's Play. I'm glad you enjoyed that. This is our third series of Professor's Play, our first about a game that we have not played before deciding to start this. We are covering Portal this week, ladies and gents. Portal, the series, so not only just the first game, because there's two games, and it's a 3D puzzle platformer cult classic, which just rolls off the tongue. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that there's a fourth member of the team today, and if you're not watching it, now you know. Suspense. As usual, I'm Professor Phil Chavot. He's Professor Brendan West. He's Professor John Adams all the way over there across from me, and joining us for this week, we have a very special and our first guest, Dr. Amelia Chesley. Woo!
Good
applause.
morning.
Yeah. I'm going to put applause in the back. No, I'm not going to do that. Too much work.
The listeners can imagine it.
They can. You're right. Podcasting is all about imagining. No Spotify.
Well, I mean, it is, actually. I was just reading a book about, horror radio, and that was, one of his big points, that audio-based only fields are all about the imagination and, self-construction of audience engagement.
I could see horror-based radio being, but horrifying. Just imagination.
Well, yeah, that was the point he made. Yeah.
So, back on track. As our first episode where we have a guest, we will talk about that for a little bit, or we should, right? But we won't, not for now. Wait a minute or two. Suspense. But by a minute, I mean 15 seconds. Per usual with the new game, just to get you guys into, or get y'all into what we're going to be doing. So today we're going to be covering the lore and just what is Portal, right? Before diving into the gameplay and giving y'all our impressions over the next few weeks. So usually I start by asking, how is everyone? And today I will not be doing that because I'm only interested in how Amelia is doing and who she is, and she's going to tell us a little bit about that. So Amelia, how are you and who are you?
I'm doing all right. It's a Tuesday. I like Tuesdays. It's raining. I love that it's raining.
It is nice.
But yeah, I'm Amelia Chesley. Where do I start? I love Portal. It was one of the first video games that I played. Kind of. That's how I think of it anyway. As I've prepped for this discussion, realized there are many other games, in fact, from childhood that I did play. But perhaps I'll ask you this question. Is there a distinction between video games and computer games? Because I think I want there to be one, but I don't know why. We can come back to that.
I mean, it depends on how do you conceptualize distinction, but any game that occurs in a digital medium that you can affect what's happening on screen is a video game. So Wordle, video game.
Wordle?
Wordle is a video game.
You're affecting the screen with your own actions, and there's a screen, right? So yeah. If you're playing Scrabble, not a video game. Scrabble on a screen, video game.
Words with Friends is a video game.
Yes.
Yeah,
Interesting. I guess maybe the distinction is because when I was a kid, it wasn't often very video-y. It was static, little Pong era type things. I have a decade on you folks, so
it was pixely.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
So the video was this upgrade in the graphics. I don't know, but aside from that, podcasting is awesome. That was something you had asked about.
Yeah, so we have here. Sorry, I should have given you the prompts. I didn't. I'm new at this. So I have a couple of pieces of information here. So Amelia is a professor here with us at Embry-Riddle, technical communication. Yeah. And she's our friend, of course, and a fellow video game, board game, tabletop RPG fan, and computer game fan.
I guess if that's its own category.
It is not.
No?
No.
We could make it one.
It is a category within video games.
Yeah. That counts.
Yeah, PC versus console.
Yeah, we don't want to start that. We're not supporting a side here, people.
I'm mostly
agnostic.
PC.
Oh, there we go. Jump right on the side.
We're gonna yell the hate comments now.
Dude,
so Amelia,
all engagements get engagement.
Fair enough. She talked a little about her experience with video games. It's funny because when she wrote down, she prepped with our script here. When she wrote down, she's like, I don't think I've played that much. But then
I kept thinking of them.
Yeah, exactly.
When I was a kid, we had the 3-inch floppy disk games. Artillery was one where you just have to shoot a cannon into a fortress.
Artillery is Angry Birds.
It's old school Angry Birds.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah.
I never played Angry Birds, but I guess I played prehistoric Angry Birds.
If we harken back to the discussion from last week, it's if all games like that were called artillery-like.
Yeah.
Because of
Angry Birds would be an artillery-like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why not? But yeah, and then Joust, classic. My family.
Joust is great.
We loved that game.
Joust is
so good. And then a bunch of weird educational games like
Math Blaster.
Yeah, or typing games. Like I loved typing games. There's one called Z-Type that's like a web-based one that I still play every now and then.
Is that the one where you kill zombies?
It's like Space Aliens or something.
Have you seen the one where you kill zombies? But I think it's like a Resident Evil mod that like you kill zombies by typing words
quickly?
fast.
Yeah.
No.
Those are just so satisfying. This is a game that actually is real, but it was described in a book first. And I mentioned this book later in our notes. The Tournament of Books is going on right now.
Oh.
And everyone should know about it.
That's
we'll
something
link
you're
to
into?
it in our description.
Sure,
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Tournament of Books is like a March Madness bracket of 16
Oh, that's
books.
fun. Yeah.
It's so good. And one of the champions, or one of the contestants, is called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. It's basically about some nerds growing up in the 80s, loving video games, and then they start making their own games. And one of the games that one of the character mates is called Emily Blaster. And it's basically a shooting game, but you have to shoot the words of an Emily Dickinson poem in the right order.
Oh, wow.
And it exists, so we can link to it too.
That's
So
fun.
you
could
slowly begin to memorize the Emily Dickinson poems?
I don't know. Is that educational?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But it was described just as a thing in the book, and then someone actually made it, which is cool.
That's really cool.
It's
Yeah,
really cool.
I just had like a crazy idea, guys. Hear me out.
All right.
Same thing, but instead of Emily Dickinson poem, because that's, too academic-y.
Wow.
We go...
Emily Dickinson would have words with you. Very nice
I would
words.
hope.
She really wouldn't.
Yeah.
Though.
It would
It's
be
true.
all 1,000 Pokemon in order.
Wow.
Oh,
So you
my
could memorize
God.
all of them in order? I would rock at that game. I'd
Yeah,
be
somebody
so good at
would.
it.
Somebody would.
I'm getting.
If you're
so many-
listening out there, single listener, or audio person or video person who's watching this, please make this game for us.
I'm getting so many flashbacks to my like real old school AP Lit teacher who would have us memorize like bits of Macbeth and like perform it.
What if you in your AP class they were like, we're gonna help you memorize this, but it's gonna be by shooting words on the screen.
I mean,
Would
I
you
think that
memorize
could
it better?
work. Maybe
That'd be interesting.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I did do theater for a couple of years, so like honestly, memorizing that speech was not that hard. It was a lot of life support player.
Excuse me.
So cool.
Life support player like struts and frets his hour upon the stage. It was that speech, so it's like pretty iconic.
Yeah, rote memorization's not super. I don't know. Do high school teachers still?
Oh yeah.
Like,
But
force
I
that
feel
on
like
people?
board games
Seems
are
like
really good at teaching stuff.
outmoded pedagogy.
I think
It is,
to have
yeah.
value in that game, it would have to be a bigger chunk of text than I would be capable of sitting down and
Yes,
memorizing in one
absolutely.
go.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like an Emily Dickinson poem, not really, because if I wanted to rote memorize that, I feel like I could. But
They're short.
if it was like the Odyssey
Yeah.
or like a long, big text, something that could be memorized, but something that like you'd have to sit down for a year to memorize, a
Yeah.
game could make that way
I
faster.
think so.
So it
Because
could-
Duolingo kind of does that with language.
Duolingo is
Phenomenal.
Is it a video
harshly
game?
disagree.
Wow, do you?
Yeah, it is
that
memorization, not actually teaching you what you should do. But yes, it's very close to a video. I had this conversation with my class yesterday about because we were talking about one of my students presented on a game that she played in Japanese but read in English, and she was like, "It was cool because I got to see like expressions and like match them to words in English, right?" And then I was like, "Yeah, you guys ever played a game to like learn a language?" They're like, "No." And I was like, "You ever heard of Duolingo?" They're like, "Oh my god." I was
all the time.
like, "Yeah."
Basically,
day.
yeah, they give you little reward points,
Exactly.
and there's lives. And
Yep.
To guess sometimes. Yeah.
So
This whole discussion really reminds me of like, I'm trying to think of like where memorizing those long bits of text would really be helpful, right? Because I don't need to memorize the Raven to write about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would never be helpful.
But
it like puts it in your heart.
yes,
you go.
but
Right.
stage actors were memorizing all of your lines throughout an entire play, like Hamlet. If you're playing Hamlet,
Right.
that could be helpful. Because I was thinking of, I saw an interview with David Tennant when he was playing Hamlet, and I think it was the Graham Norton show. They kind of challenged him. They like gave him one of the lines preceding one of his lines, just out of like a random part of the play, and he sat there. He's like, okay, wait, and he did actually manage to do it. To like still respond appropriately, but what that sort of revealed was how contextual his memory of his lines
Oh, yeah,
was.
yeah.
That makes sense.
yeah.
And I'm thinking like the video game, might help get like sort of like a more robust mode of memorization.
Yeah, it could definitely
like
be
stage
interesting.
actors.
Well, and that's why like I would to a certain extent I disagree with Phil on Duolingo, and it's not that Duolingo is like perfect, but like when you're just building vocab, that rote memorization comes in real handy. Like you have to do Duolingo plus read a book in that language.
No, I would say Duolingo
together.
is better than zero things.
Better than no things.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
and what else am I
that's a
going to
very
do on
low
the
bar.
toilet, right? Like,
John,
why do you gotta go there?
this is why I have to put an explicit tag in every episode because John says something.
let's read that.
I mean, you could just edit out all of John's lines.
Oh no, we don't.
No, we're rustic.
Authentic.
Yeah, as we have discussed.
We
before
we
this
very
started.
much skimp on the post production.
So, continue here. Amelia also asked you about your experience with. Well, you talked about watching girlfriend reviews, girlfriend plays.
Yeah, I
on
forget
YouTube?
how we got into that. Girlfriend Reviews is a channel.
I've seen some of their
It's been
their
a
stuff.
while
It's
since
good.
I've watched, but yeah, her first one was a Red Dead Redemption, which my husband was playing at the time, so it was like, oh, relatable.
Yeah, it's. I've seen some of their stuff. It's
Yeah.
really good.
What is it?
It's a channel where she doesn't review the game. She reviews the experience of living with someone who's playing the game.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
It's
so
good.
for Red Dead specifically, it was like, I watched all these animals being skinned and it was disgusting, and all the horses and their biology and cowboys. I love watching Jeremiah play poker in Red Dead. It's like the most fun.
Interesting.
I don't know why.
Is poker?
It's a mini game.
Yeah, but is it how realistic is the poker? Do you know?
I mean, I don't know things about poker, but it seems real realistic. They have different little characters who will bet against you and fold and
There's
leave and
Persona 5 has this where you play against your friends, but it's not poker. It's that game where you have like a king, a prince, a rich person, and a poor person, and like you have to like tycoon. I think is what it's called.
I don't remember this part of Persona.
Oh well, it's
the new one.
It's in the new one, and like
That makes
you can
sense
go to
then.
like a mini game and do this, and it's just
Okay.
it's cool. I could play that for hours, and I may or may have not already done that. But it's cool because they all have lines and they all have like behave as if they wouldn't in real life in the game, right? So they'll like one of the characters is more brash, so he's always doing aggressive moves, and it's really well programmed.
It's
Very
getting
cool.
it's getting better with gambling games, but like old school like Harvest Moon used to have like gambling games and poker, and the issue that I always had with those was like after a while you knew that if you did certain things, certain conditions would always apply, and so there were moments where you could like rake the casino for everything they were worth because they put some effort in the mini game, but they didn't like.
Yeah, there's definitely more.
It wasn't a
complexity
poker
in the
game.
coding there.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. Someone else probably has written about it.
Fair.
But I
Probably.
enjoyed it because poker is, I don't know, the suspense of poker is interesting.
It's fun.
But I'm not good at it, so like I can't play.
My brother is insanely good at poker.
Wow.
I have a little brother who goes and fleeces people occasionally on like Saturday night at poker houses.
No.
And he keeps a spreadsheet of his winnings and losses throughout the year.
Is this Josh?
Yeah,
Wow.
he's really
God.
good.
Wow.
Every time I hear about Josh, I'm just like, this is the most Josh thing I ever heard. I don't even know this guy.
He's really good
No,
at
my
poker.
priority in poker is always I want to see what the cards are. I want to see everyone's
Me too.
cards.
That's a good.
And that's the worst motive to have because
The heart of the cards.
I just want to see what they say.
And then Amelia also has experience with podcasts/shows, which is also why she was, not only because she is interested in this topic, but also why she was interested in joining us here today. So if you want to, well, you teach a podcast class here.
Yeah,
actually.
I have been obsessed with podcasts since like 2009.
Wow.
And radio before that. I loved just radio shows. So Radio Lab was my first podcast.
What is it about podcasts that you love?
I mean, going back to like the audio only, the accessibility, like you can do the dishes, you can drive, you can knit, whatever you
My
need
drive
to
time,
do.
for sure.
Yeah.
You can do it while you're listening. And then the podcasts that I particularly like are just great at telling stories and getting you interested and piquing your curiosity. So
This podcast. So this one right here.
I don't know, man. I'll be honest.
That's fair. That's fair. We're just starting. You know.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I'll probably watch this episode.
Oh, that's great.
Because I'm in it.
The storytelling comes.
Or
yeah,
I'll
I
listen.
think
Who knows?
we were having a discussion about like what is a podcast, what is more of a talk show / video show podcast thing, than a true blue podcast is what you describe it. Other podcasts here as, but I think all the podcasts I listen to are more like this, but they are like reviews of Formula One races or of the weekend in sports and that kind of stuff. I think the podcast I listen to that's the most true blue is I haven't listened in a while, but I do love it. It's called History of Japan, and it's a former. You guys are gonna laugh at this. A former PhD student who didn't finish because he was like, I can't do this anymore.
Fair.
I feel that.
Exactly. So he went to teach high school instead, and he loves it. But he started because the first few episodes, he's like, I'm a grad student, I'm working on my thesis. And like 3 seasons in, he's like, I'm leaving grad school. But he's great, and he got so big, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's just him talking to the microphone and explaining different things of Japanese history. But he got so big that there was a Netflix documentary. They called him in to be one of the experts, which was really cool.
Yeah, that's the great thing about podcasting as a medium is just so ginormous. It's expansive because it's free from the constraints of just regular broadcast media, the radio clock, and all those things where you had to fit around the ads and stuff. You can make a podcast that's 2 minutes long every day, or you can make a podcast that's 5 hours long every day if you want to. And there's probably an audience for it, that long tail of like niche content and topics.
What do you mean by long tail?
The long tail?
Yeah, describe that, because I know what you're talking, and I think it's interesting.
So yeah, the long tail is a concept, I think it was early 2000s, just as the internet was becoming really big. People realized like we don't have to sell just the mainstream stories, the mainstream stuff. There's this long tail, like on the graph, this long tail of like 5 people are going to buy this. But if we sell it to them, that's 5 more sales.
The only way they'll buy it is if we sell it.
Yeah, it's Chris Anderson wrote about it in Wired. We can link to that as well, and you can learn more because that's the internet has had that effect that there is infinite.
Yeah, it's like
exponentially like niche things. They still find an audience, enough of an audience, to be worth it.
It's things that you would never see if you were a regular person in the audience, which you are, right? So like, what's going on here?
Oh, just for our long tail viewers out there, people that are only here because they never see another form of content. But they're here now. And we appreciate it.
I was mostly talking about like how you see like quick behind the scenes things and different things, or like. They have in soccer. They have cameras in the room that they have right before they go onto the pitch, right? Which is like, it's not necessarily the most engaging content, but you see the players getting ready in the final moments before they go out there, which is things that you didn't see until like the 2000s maybe.
Because it's gotten so much cheaper and easier to not only record and create that, but to reach whatever audience. Pretty much, yay the internet.
So with that understanding that we are kind of at the lower end of the long tail here in our particular comment, what do you mean, because you're the expert here, what do you mean by true blue podcast? Like what do you consider as like a podcasty podcast of the podcastiness?
Podcast make podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is hotly debated.
In your class.
I'm teaching right now a 100 level humanities class called The Art and History of Podcasts. And this is our big central question: what is a podcast and what is not? And why does it matter? There are scholars who have their definition. There's the dictionary definition, and then there's sort of if you label it a podcast, then it's a podcast because the usage is king, and who cares? So there's that mainstream idea in which, yes, you've called this a podcast, so it is one.
But you do not subscribe to that.
But I really want to privilege the audio onlyness. So there's video here, and that takes it a notch down. It's a video podcast, maybe. It's not created to be. I mean, you do put it out on audio only platforms and in that mode, so it's on the border. But the definition that I like is from scholar Eric Detweiler, who does a lot of podcast research as well, and he insists that is audio only file, digital, distributed digitally, and in a serial form.
We have those things except for the audio.
So that's why you're like 90% there. Yeah. And this style of podcast is becoming so much more common. Like you mentioned, most of your views are on YouTube, and that's probably why, because YouTube is this huge black hole of content.
And I feel like it's not to interrupt you, but I feel like it's similar with like you have Bluetooth headphones are so common now that you can set your computer on YouTube And if it's something like this that you don't have to watch, it's the same as podcasting, right? It's just,
and that's what my students keep saying. They're like, the video doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You don't need it. And I'm like, well, but it's still there.
It does for some.
It has information.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really depends. Like, there's everything along, like, Critical Role came up. That's definitely not a podcast because there's so much visual that does matter with their minis and their maps and whatever else. Costumes half the time. I don't know. I don't watch it as often as I just listen to it now. So this is a sort of a media convergence sort of thing.
No, it's interesting.
Content can exist across all these modes and be accessed in all these different modes, which is another part of my research in a podcast. So I'm teaching about it, but I also have made it part of my scholarship to look into podcasts and accessibility. I love it when podcasts have transcripts.
Yes.
And it just makes it easier to look up, like, they mentioned something. What was it? How do you spell it?
YouTube auto-transcribes. Does that count?
Closed captions are not a transcript.
Transcript is,
But can't you just print the closed caption?
I don't think so. I don't think you can, but I haven't tried. Someone should try.
Really?
I don't think you can. And that's
you can skim the video to get to the part you want in the closed caption, but it is not well generated. Yeah. It's not as good as you going in there and putting it yourself.
Plus automated transcription's getting a lot better, but it's still a little wonky sometimes. So a transcript, standalone text, and it can be HTML, it can be a Word document or a text file or a PDF or something. The TED organization, they do like the best transcripts that I have found, and in multiple languages sometimes, which is like, if only we could all be TED.
It's interesting. Well,
the secret is low-paid interns.
Well, I mean, we'll pay them accordingly. It's interesting to me, like, how accessibility has evolved, because I remember, 3, 4, or 5 years ago, accessibility was including captions in your video. And now that's good, but there's more stuff we can do, right? And I think that's just, like, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I've seen in some of my research, too, podcasts with, here's an ASL version, video with sign language, because that's for a certain type of audience. I know, so it's not installed.
So did they just...
And this is just...
not become podcast?
Well, it's interesting to think, like, this whole, like, is it a podcast, is it not? It's interesting if we, like, to take it back to video games, it's like, if we have a mobile game, or, like, let's say you have Call of Duty, which you can play on the PS system, whatever, but you can also play it on a mobile game. Is that a mobile game, or is that a mobile version of a PS game? And it's the same kind of thing as being multimodal as a podcast that has video, because you're calling it a podcast and it's in podcast form, but then you also have a video, and all that kind of stuff. So if you take a video game and you're like, well, this game is originally from the PS4, but it's also a mobile game now, so there's a mobile version of that game. Is it a mobile game? Totally different. So I think multimodality will kind of do away with certain distinctions of podcasts versus other things.
I can see that, because it ceases to matter to most people.
Yeah.
And they'll access it in whatever way they like to, or whatever way makes sense for them in the moment.
Yeah. I'm not okay with this. I think we need to have Amelia personally label every podcast that's ever created. Podcast?
Ooh.
Not podcast.
You know what? That sounds like a
You're going to write me a grant for that project? Because that could be fun.
And then we'll have it written down, like the Oxford Dictionary, but for podcasts.
That sounds like a content analysis that would get you, like, thousands of citations. It would take you thousands of years.
One of the projects I'm working on, I want to create a database of podcasts and have the name of the podcast and dates and stuff, like some general metadata about the podcast, and then most importantly, is there a transcript or not?
Ooh.
I have 200 of these so far.
Wow.
And
if there's not a transcript, are you still including them in your database?
Yeah, because you gotta shame them for not having a transcript.
It's just big red letters.
Can we be shamed on your database, please?
Sure.
Any engagement.
Yeah, actually. So I had a whole method approach to, like, create sort of a representative sample. I initially had 90, and then I doubled it last summer with some student interns.
Nice.
Research assistants.
Yeah.
But I've paid a particular attention to academic podcasts that my friends have made, or acquaintances from academic Twitter or whatever. So you're definitely welcome in that little subset.
Man, That's us.
That was like 19 pixels of depth.
Yeah, that
was like more depth than we ever get on the show.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, someday, I mean, we kind of did build a website. That was my summer research project last summer, and we kind of built it, but it's kind of ugly. It's a work in progress, so
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, it's the same as this show. It's a work in progress.
Everything.
True.
But games,
so
podcasts,
shows, Amelia's experience with video games. Like John said, this is like the most pixels of depth we ever had, which is awesome.
We should have guests.
I want to shout out. This is a crossover from my experience with games and podcasts. My one grad class on games, Rhetoric, Games, and Play, with Dr. Samantha Blackman.
Oh yes.
Who, I don't know if y'all know her.
Maybe I do.
If you should.
Yes.
But you should.
I don't know her. I know of her.
Listeners should know her, perhaps. And Not Your Mama's Gamer is a podcast very much like yours, discussion based, unedited.
Rustic.
Rustic is the term we prefer.
Maybe. And I haven't listened to it for a long time, so they may have evolved. But they are cool, and a journal grew out of that podcast.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know, goals?
Yeah, we have talked about having a journal where the submissions are all things that like try to explain inexplicable things that happen in media.
Oh, dude, complicated. Yeah, like I want to know. Like I want to have somebody write me a journal article on like the anatomy of a centaur. Like really break it down for me where the heart is, where the lungs get
with
citations.
Exist
with citations.
No.
That must.
Just a journal full of nonsense.
Oh,
yeah, I'm sure there's fanfic like existences of it.
Yeah.
But I want like an academic journal
a
where
biologist.
we get a biologist to be like this, or like an economist to break down like if Baldur's Gate exists, how would that economy actually function?
And of course, every article would begin like, okay, like let's ignore all the crazy stuff.
Right.
Economy. Yeah.
Right.
So get Randall Munroe.
Yes.
And
I want Randall Munroe and many others to write a bunch of
start a
fantasy nonsense, like what if, but not with real problems.
Yeah. Fantasy what if.
This is
fantasy what if.
This is trademark.
I was just reading a bunch of what ifs this morning.
There was
funnily enough.
There was a Cambridge mathematician who calculated how King Kong's biology would work. Basically, found out it wouldn't.
Yeah.
If King Kong tries to jump or run at all of his bones will shatter like glass.
Yeah, I assume every article has to start with some version of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, horses cannot actually fly. With that said, let us calculate the speed that Rainbow Dash moves through the air by watching video and trying to figure out how fast this My Little Pony can actually go.
There's a channel on YouTube that his name is... keep forgetting his name.
David Brian Gilbert, and he does things like that on YouTube. He's a YouTuber. He's great.
He goes like, how much money would Mario need to retire? And he goes
he
goes real deep, and he looks at like the economy of the Mario universe based on like different games and how there has been inflation in the Mario universe. It's pretty incredible. So yeah, I would love a whole journal.
I want a whole journal just to that nonsense.
The long tail.
The long tail. Yeah, I would buy that journal.
But yeah, so yes, none of us have played Portal. Well, I think
I have a little.
Brandon started this week, but before we get into our experience with Portal, what is Portal? Well, thank you for asking, listener. So Portal is created by Valve in No, I'm kidding.
Who's Valve?
I'll get there.
Okay.
So it is created by Valve, although it was in 2009, I believe, or maybe 6. But it's interesting because Valve is a video game developer known for another cult classic called Half-Life, which is like a huge thing. Everyone's always clamoring for a sequel. They had a VR experience, I believe.
It was good.
Yeah, that was really good. And also the infamously, and I'm going to say infamously popular FPS first-person shooter Counter-Strike.
Well, Valve is responsible for Counter-Strike too.
Yeah.
Team Fortress as well, right?
So I'm not sure, but Half-Life is actually CS is a mod of Half-Life that they made internally that turned out so good that they made it into a whole game.
I did not know that before today.
Right?
Wow.
Pixel.
So
Portal is a first-person platformer in which your player, solves puzzles and figures out what to platform to with the use of, shocker, portals. Like teleportation portals, right? So you open a portal here, you open a portal somewhere else, and you can go through it or push things through it, whatever it is, to solve puzzles. So you have 2 guns, right? One shoots blue circles, one shoots orange circles.
It's one gun.
It's one gun.
Kind of modded. They are 2 guns they mod together.
Okay. So you have an item.
I'm taking on my pedant role very seriously.
Yeah, no, you're the expert. Yeah.
That's why you're here.
So you create a wormhole of sorts in between them, right? Wormhole is probably the best way to describe that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you and other things travel between them.
Imagine a piece of paper.
Yeah,
Fold it in half. With a pencil.
That's exactly what it is.
There you go. That's how they always explain in the movies.
Couple of
We're pulling
interesting
out
things.
the Event Horizon references now.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
There's several movies.
Portal history. Okay, Portal actually. So, Portal was a game called something else with a really difficult name that I'm not going to try to pronounce. Made by some students at DigiPen, which is a yes.
I looked this up after I saw it in your script outline. I thought it was just called Tag.
No, it was called something with an N in there. Here, I can Google it real fast while we keep talking.
That was cool and news to me. I didn't know that it had started as a student project, which is pretty neat.
Yes.
I have a friend whose brother works at DigiPen.
Oh, cool!
Really?
Yeah,
It was called Narbacular Drop. No, it is.
Okay.
It is based on a similar company from Narbacular. Yes, sorry. It was called Narbacular Drop, and it was a student group that made this at DigiPen. Which DigiPen is a university that basically focuses on
just games.
Game
production and all that goes therein.
But they have professors there we could talk to.
I bet so. Yeah, and they actually had an opening a little bit ago for a communication gamer kind of thing.
Wow.
Interesting.
And you stayed here above it all.
It wasn't tenure track.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah. So anyway, DigiPen, cool place. So some students made this, and it's in Seattle where all these studios kind of are around there. So they have like these big game fairs, and Valve was walking around the game fair at DigiPen, and they saw this thing and they were like, "Wait, this is amazing." So they invited them to give a presentation at Valve, and on the spot they hired them.
Wow.
Yeah, they were like, "This is so good, and you're so far ahead that for us to recreate this would cost more money than just hiring you." So they hired them, and the team that worked on Portal was largely the team that created it at DigiPen. It was 10 people working on it at any most 10 people at any time.
Wow.
They changed some things. It used to be a dungeon setting, but they moved it around to look more like the film The Island. So it would be like futuristic. Familiar with The Island?
Yeah, but that's Michael Bay. I've only seen the Michael Bay remake.
The Island, is that when they're like, there's cloning happening?
Yeah. Jude Law, and I forget who the main actor.
Okay, I think it
But that one came out post Portal, because that was in my teens somewhere. And Portal was before that.
I think
right?
so, man.
Really?
Yeah.
They styled that after Michael Bay's Island?
Yeah.
We could check, I guess. 2007 was Portal. I do think The Island was before that.
I do think as well. Yeah.
Because it was like college.
But that's why it looks all white and like
this
sterile
lab.
in this lab. Yeah.
The Island came out in 2005.
So,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
Stop time. Stop. What are you doing?
So that's why. So the original setting was like you're in a dungeon and you have to rescue a princess with using portals.
Boring.
Okay.
And exactly.
Kind
they
of
were
derivative.
Like, let's move that around. But the thing is that the design was so good, right? It was a clever design of and how the mechanics, and how the physics worked in between portals and through portals was so well done that Valve was like, this is so good that we're going to do everything else to change it, but the way you guys coded this is better than we could. Right?
Impossible in real life, supposedly.
Yes. But that's why it's interesting because they were like, this feels exactly like what a physics of going through a portal would be even though we have no way of actually knowing that.
Yep.
Right? So it kind of... I actually want to talk about the story of Portal here a little bit. So I know the gist of it, but Amelia, I was hoping you could help us with the story of
I am trying a little bit.
No spoilers.
I don't always pay tons
of attention. Well, no crazy
attention.
spoilers, but you know.
Yeah. I don't always pay tons of attention to like the lore and the stuff of the story because like the puzzles and actually like figuring out takes up enough of my attention. But basically, you play it's first person. Your character is orange jumpsuit lab rat.
Okay.
No, it's a woman actually.
It's a woman. Wow, John.
Her name is Shell.
Check my biases.
Her name is Shell. Chell.
Yes.
E.
Yeah.
Which just isn't important to the game, but it is kind of evocative. It's like this shell, like you can put yourself in.
Of a person.
Clever.
Clever.
We're going to talk about this.
And
as well.
The idea is you're the test subject, and there's this AI, GLaDOS, who basically taunts you and teases you and psychologically abuses you through the tests.
I love it.
And there are little hints along the way that like something, like that's weird enough, but like something weirder than that. Like there's
What's going on?
Are there others? Are there?
Yeah, are you the only lab rat?
Yeah. So Aperture Science logo is everywhere. The loading screens are the elevators between the floors of the levels, and there are other characters, NPCs, I guess you could call them, the cubes, companion cubes, and then the turrets, sentry turrets. I think is the official
they're the ones that kill you.
Wiki term for them. Yeah, the evil laser robots.
Yeah.
They're very polite. They'll ask, "Are you still there? Are you?" I'm waking up now. I'm shutting down now, but then they'll kill you with lasers. So.
Well, I do enjoy a nice assassin.
Yeah. So you've got GLaDOS as the big bad. You've got the little turret minions, and your job is just get through it, and get through all the snark that she's throwing at you about how this is meaningless. This isn't being recorded. This isn't.
Unlike this podcast.
Unlike this.
She's not meaningless and is being recorded.
But yeah, the snark and the personality of GLaDOS is really what I think made the game blow up. Because it's dark and quirky and different.
Yeah, I feel like
very quotable, memeable, I guess.
I've seen sometimes these websites I follow, they'll do March Madness brackets of villains or something, and GLaDOS is usually a top 8 finisher.
Beloved.
Yeah, beloved villain.
Yeah.
Yeah. It berates you psychologically.
Well, we talked about this a little bit with Hades, how you can have a great game, but unless you have that narrative or those characters or the reason to be doing that with those, you're going to lose out on the fandom.
Maybe.
It depends.
Maybe. It depends a lot. But yeah, that's one way of also getting a good fandom is by having, because part of why Portal's a cult classic is because the story is simple, air quotes, right, on the face of it,
right,
but the mechanics are so good and clever. No one had ever done something like this before. It happened, there was a game that did this a little bit before, but it wasn't this good and it wasn't this in depth, and there was no GLaDOS or personality, right? So part of why it became a cult classic is it was cheap. It's quick, which is, we're still in this phase in the industry, but there's a lot of perception that if something isn't a 60-hour AAA game, then it's not a good game, right? Which is not true at all. And it was also fresh, this was a new mechanic, right? So I'm talking about 2D platformers, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but we've seen 2D platformers of all shapes and sizes. So platforming without enemies, platforming with enemies, platforming with weapons, platformers that you got to go back to that level after you beat it if you got a new item, all that kind of stuff. And this one has portals, right, which is its own thing. So if you make a game now with portals, people are going to say Portal.
Like Portal.
Yeah. So for our own history with Portal, we're going to go around here because Amelia's told us a little bit of it. So we're going to go around the rest of the team here. So for myself, Portal, I'm aware of it. I've always been aware of its existence. I know it came out at some point in the mid-2000s, which was 2007. But platformers, both in 2D and 3D, were never really my thing. I'm very, very bad at Mario, the 2D, Mario 3. I would like to be good at it. I am not. Actually, my friend Koji Yoshimura, who hopefully is listening to this, shout out. He works at UVA in Amsterdam. And we at one point when we started studying at Texas Tech together, we're let's beat Mario 3 in our 3 years here, and we did not. A lot of that is because I am very bad at it. So for the first 20 minutes of me playing, I would just die in the stupidest ways, just falling through it was dumb. And then at one point we just started doing these what we call hubris runs, which is basically speedrunning, but we don't know how to speedrun this game, so we just sprint. Because in Mario 3 you can hold the B button and sprint.
Oh, me and my son are playing through it.
Yeah. So we go through it and we're just trying to go as fast as possible until we die. And sometimes we made it, and most of the time we didn't.
How far did you make? What world did you make it to?
Oh, we're world 3. Yeah. Yeah, we did not do a good job.
The 4-year-old has beaten you.
Oh yeah, no, I believe that. But Portal also had the absolute sheer gall of coming out and being popular when all I played was sports games.
Oh.
So that's on Portal, not on me.
Portal, not you.
So you missed it, huh?
I did.
Well, I missed all the Mario stuff.
Yeah, I missed all RPGs. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But now you're back into gaming, and we're going to talk about that here. when we come around. John, what's your history with Portal?
Mine's much the same as yours, although you should replace sports games with, I was fully consumed at that point in my life with World of Warcraft. So I was...
So you were cool at that point.
Did you watch The
So
Guild?
cool. What?
Did you ever watch The Guild?
That was my life. So I was in like middle school at that point, and I used to have all the free time in the world because I was a middle schooler, and so I used to do like from 3 when I got home to midnight every day, nonstop raiding, constant. Wow. Yeah, I've got easily thousands of hours into World of Warcraft, and that consumed my life during that point. So I missed Portal, I missed Half-Life, I missed CS:GO. I missed a lot of the original Call of Duties. I did take a break for Halo.
Nice.
Played through Halo. But there was a big chunk in my life there where it wasn't that I wasn't gaming, it was that
World. Well, that was me with
consumed
FIFA.
everything.
Every day I played for like 6 to 8 hours, and that was my life.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That was me with Halo.
Yeah, Brendan, so what is your history here?
Oh, yeah. So we were an Xbox family, so naturally we got the orange box. I watched my brothers play through Portal, as in I watched parts of their playthroughs, not the whole thing. And then I played bits and pieces of like Portal 2 with a friend of mine on his Xbox, just because he needed someone to do co-op with.
Yeah.
And I was over at his house. So I had seen parts of the game, and I had played like a tiny little bit. And of course I knew it by reputation because I was a Zero Punctuation fan way back in the day, so I'd seen his review of it. Yeah, when I was a teenager.
Well, he has a certain appeal to a certain audience.
Sure, yeah.
That is a true statement. Sorry.
Let's not pick any fights with like much bigger chances.
Yeah,
here.
true. If Punctuation reviews us, that'd be awesome, actually. Please don't do that.
Oh,
I'm scared.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. So, I knew it by reputation, and therefore, when it came up on the Steam sale for like $2 or something super cheap, years ago back, I think when I was in college, actually, I went ahead and bought it. Only I graduated college, I'm going to date myself here, in 2015, and I didn't download Portal until like 3 weeks ago.
You're lucky they kept the servers alive then.
It's been in my Steam library for like 8 years.
Because Valve became Steam, right? Sort of? Kind of?
I think Valve owns Steam.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Steam
a
is the platform that they created to sell their games.
That's the complaint. Everyone's like, make Half-Life instead of just selling things on Steam.
Yeah, well,
they're the Amazon of video games.
Yeah, that's
basically.
exactly. Steam is much bigger than... Steam as a platform is much bigger than Valve as a studio.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Steam as a platform. Platformer? There it is. I'm gonna make your reaction faster to that in post.
All right.
But Brendan has started playing. You played about half an hour, you said?
Yeah, I played about half an hour. I think I'm on...
Do you know what? Yeah, what level are you on? What test chamber are you on?
I'm either 9 or 10. The one where you get, like, the fully powered portal gun.
Okay.
So, like, I can see the fully powered
Yeah, they
portal
give
gun.
it to you in halves.
Yeah, but I haven't gotten down to it yet.
Okay.
So I still need to, get that second piece.
Yeah, it goes... I played again last week to kind of refresh my memory, and it went way faster because I am more of a gamer now than I was.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit here.
So Amelia
linked the post to she made in a blog, her own blog.
Are we going to put this in our place?
What's your blog called?
So, my blog currently is called Words Make Everything Better, because I am...
It's a good name.
An English nerd. And in, December of 2010, I wrote about Portal and my very first experience with Portal. As a preface to this, I'm going to kind of flash back to my college days, which were well before Portal came out. Well, a few years before. And,
well before. 1980s.
So I'd played floppy disk games, whatever, as a child. Didn't really touch them at all during high school and college. All my neighbor boys in the dorms had their Xboxes.
Right.
So we played Halo Capture the Flag.
Oh yeah.
And I got pretty okay. If I could get the shotgun, I could do well in those, and I had fun with it. And that was it. That was all the video games, pretty much, other than maybe a few browser games here and there. But I got obsessed with this internet riddle, notprom.com. This weird internet riddle in 2004, 2005.
That's weird, man.
I know.
Old internet is
It's
super
super weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, that riddle's still up there. So, you know, I gave up eventually, but I was obsessed for a while. And my very best friend that I met on the internet in 2003.
Sure.
20 years ago.
Wow.
He, seeing that obsession with the puzzle, the riddle, when Portal came out, he was like, "You will love this game. You need to play this game." And I was like, whatever. Like,
are you a puzzler generally? Like, do you do puzzles at home?
Jigsaw puzzles? Yeah. My family's into puzzles.
Okay.
And I
so
feel
maybe
like
there's something there.
You knit, and I feel like knitting is like figuring out how much and what things
Can
to
be.
do.
Yeah, knitting is basically an algorithm in
Yeah.
its own way. But yeah, I went actually 13 years ago this month. I went to meet my best friend in the world in person, and he sat me down and was like, "Play some of Portal, just try it." And I did. And then I painstakingly, like, half hours at a time, like, I'm not like the 6-hour binge gaming person.
Yeah, it's good for you.
I don't know. I never was that. Probably never will be that, really. So it was real small chunks that I, like, tried to work through. And I was having fun with it. But then December, I was mostly through. Like, I was probably stuck in the final battle when I wrote this. And this is my... I know.
There you go.
I wrote this about my introduction to Portal. So last March, I sat down for a few moments behind a small desk in a house in Nottingham, and I played this video game called Portal. My friend Chris had been selling the whole concept of this game to me for months and months, convinced that I would love it. Convinced that it would be the key to toppling once and for all my generally snobby attitude towards gaming.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
The puzzles, he said. The quirky humor, he said. It's also you, he said. He told me all about GLaDOS and the cake and the portal guns. He did not tell me about the evil laser-shooting robots or the toxic slime, and of course the first handful of levels don't have those, so I was fine. And I do like Portal still, even though I have died at the bottom of toxic puddles and been shot to death by evil lasers more times than anyone could ever count. Today I'm stuck in the middle of the very last level. It's taken me 6 months of few and far between Saturdays to get this far, and it might take me just as long to finish the game. I still don't picture myself as what you'd call a gamer, despite the fun I have been known to have had on various neighbor boys' Xboxes back in the day. There are expectations about those kinds of people. Pale, twitchy, antisocial, obsessed. I'm not like that. Or am I?
Ooh.
So what? The first half of this blog post is about yoga, which I also didn't see myself as a yogi. And today I do a lot of yoga and I do a lot more video gaming, so.
Do you see yourself as a gamer now?
Do you see yourself as a yogi now? It's the real question people in the podcast want to know.
All right, fair enough.
Really? I think that I would, and partly because, and maybe grad school has done this to me, I favor an expansive view of definitions, except for podcasts. Definitions, if we can stretch them, let's do it. So I think I would include myself in a stretched
I think the perception of gamer has changed too.
That's what I was going to say. Nerd culture really has become more mainstream.
Yeah, so even 2010, it probably was like I was being uber stereotypical.
Yeah, no,
I didn't need to be.
The only game I played was sports games because I thought that other games like were dumb.
And I was twitchy and pasty.
Yeah. Like, why would I go to a different world if I can just, play soccer? And it's just, it was, missed a bunch of stuff. But it's interesting to think about how nerd culture has become mainstream. But like, the one thing I would say is I don't think that even gamer is a part of nerd culture, but it's not only.
No.
I would say that gamers like. It is, if you had a Venn diagram, right? Gamer would be, nerd culture would be coming into it, but like mainstream culture is also there, and gamer's in the middle.
And I feel like gamer used to be more of a Venn diagram with nerd culture, and it has
moving out.
And I would hold FIFA and Madden responsible for a lot of that.
Absolutely,
that they moved the bar further away from like the Atari and Mario, and because it used to be placed a lot closer to like pinball machines.
Yep.
right? Where you'd have like machines in bars or in restaurants that people were good at. It was seen as kind of like...
And then arcades.
And then arcades.
Yeah.
And it moved from there into sort of everybody's living room. And now it's just an entertainment device.
That was part of it too, right? Because like, so when you had arcade machines and you had arcades, especially like traditional arcade style in Japan and stuff, people who walked into those arcades, they were not casuals, so to speak.
Right.
They were there to spend money, and they were there to beat people in Street Fighter, in whatever.
It's a whole ethos.
Right? Exactly. It was their whole personality was this. Right? They get off work or school, and this was their thing.
This is what I do.
And when they got to homes, it kind of shifted not only because we created games that weren't necessarily to be played competitive only, like you know, Final Fantasy, Zelda, Mario, etc. But also now you could game on your own without needing a second player, or it being fun without a second player.
Right.
Because before, if you're playing Street Fighter without a second player, you can train, but there's nothing you can do. Right. So we created a situation where now you're doing this at home, so you can't invite the people from the smoky Tokyo arcade into your home, or you could, but you probably won't do that.
Yeah, they're kind of weird.
Yeah, they're real intense. So you create games that play better by yourself or with one or two people
Family
instead
members.
of exactly. So it has moved in that direction as well, where like we talked about this, the PS2 is the most sold console ever because it was also a DVD player. So families were like, well,
we need a DVD player anyway.
We might as well get this. It's also a video game console, right? So the PS2 also had a huge part in ushering this era. And I think this is a study I want to do at some point. I think there's also the mainstreamization of anime has also helped bring gamer culture into the mainstream because of a lot of games being based on, you know, there's graphics and there's animation, and by anime becoming more popular in general, it has also popularized some of these games that in the West we didn't see for a while.
Well, there was in the 80s even, there was still a distinct anti-Japanese holdover from earlier wars, basically.
Yeah.
And so as that has lessened, then we've opened the door to we've expanded, as you said. We've taken an expansive view, right? Toward other cultures as well, which has helped with the gaming.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. I think I did miss a lot of stuff in the early 2000s because I was playing FIFA so much. I don't necessarily regret it. That was really good and it was fun.
You can't do everything.
You
can't do everything.
No.
It's a lesson we'll learn when we play Persona 4, everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Ominous.
Okay, so Portal, like we said, is a puzzle platformer, right? So if you think of Mario, the classic ones in 2D, it's this, but in 3D. So if you played Mario Odyssey or Mario 64, but also you have portal guns, right? That's the thing. So platformers were one of the first types of games made, and kind of funny to think about because they were called jump and run games.
Jump and runs.
Which kind of reminds me of like those Infinite Runners on mobile.
Yeah.
Which are essentially platformers.
The little square cube jumping over spikes.
Yeah. So they're called jump and run games, and it's kind of funny if that had stuck, Mario would be a jump and run like.
Jump and run like.
Jump and run like.
Instead of a platformer. But when Mario came out, it was called the jump and run game because platformer wasn't the topic. Well, not Mario, Donkey Kong from 1981, because that was the first one that had like a recognizable like Mario as a sprite that you're thinking of.
Right.
Yeah.
Would Joust be a platformer?
Yes, but there's probably a subgenre there because it's gonna be like a dueling platformer or a. Because it's not a platformer in the traditional sense, because you're not like scrolling.
Yeah, it doesn't
across.
go anywhere.
Yeah,
it's infinite. It's like a.
Yeah, you're definitely like it's
that same arena, right?
So there's probably like a subgenre tag.
I would say it's a like a fighting game with a platform element.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fighting platform.
Because these terms and stuff. I mean, even though I took a grad class on games, it wasn't only video games. So I don't know all these.
I would say Joust is more like Super Smash.
Yes.
Than a platform.
Yeah,
and Super Smash is, I forget the term, but it's like a jumping fighting game. It's an arena.
No
it's
running,
an arena fight.
just jumping.
But that's why I'm a little shocked that they call Portal a platformer, because my conception of it, I would put it much closer to puzzle than I put it to like Mario, which I think is like the platformer.
Maybe it's the 3D-ness, because I never would have thought of, like, once I learned what platformer is, I wouldn't have put Portal in that category.
I think it's...
Or like Super Mario 64 is a 3D platformer, but the goal with that is to like jump and do acrobatics tricks, whereas Portal, at least I don't know because I haven't played, but it doesn't sound like people are doing like it's not about like the skill of acrobatics. You're more like trying to figure out the right path.
Yeah, but you have to have skill to like...
Some of both?
Yeah, to have... Because I know there's like tricks of like using 2 portals to launch yourself further out and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
So there's the puzzly figuring out, but then the excution like is...
So there's some platform elements.
It is a test of agility.
I think it's kind of like it's a puzzle first platformer. It's not a platformer puzzler.
Okay.
It's a puzzle platformer where you're solving puzzles.
That sounds familiar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's also a first-person shooter, so...
It is, technically. Because you're in the first person, you're shooting a gun.
Yeah.
So...
I know.
First person...
I just had to complicate
It's not called first-person shooty bullets. It's called first-person shooter. So as long as you're...
Shooting portal rays. All right, fine. Same way that a chihuahua is a dog.
This is
you
why
haven't even
definitions...
played it. You gotta give it a chance.
This is why definitions are
We'll see what you think next
time.
All right,
I'm gonna check back with you. I will say, I don't love puzzle games.
Yeah, neither of us.
It's like one of my least favorite genres to play. So
Like, what other examples have you hated?
Well, Pokemon Puzzle League is maybe one of the worst games I've ever played. But no, so I played through Myst, and I played through a game called Numa, which was an interesting one, really quick. And they're both kind of the same. And they're okay. My issue with puzzle games, so if you don't know this about me, maybe because we were in this last episode together, but I love roguelikes. I really, really love roguelikes, and that's because even when I die or fail at a roguelike, I progress a little tiny bit. The story is always progressing to some degree, and I can always get better. Puzzles don't allow for that. I get stuck. If you get stuck, there's nothing you can do other than like figure it out to suddenly progress. There's no like leveling up in most puzzle games.
It's less incremental. It's more all or nothing.
It's more like, try again.
Yeah, it's like try again, figure it out, right? Which is weird because I don't mind it in like traditional platformers like Mario, which is also like a try again, get better.
Yeah.
But with puzzles, sometimes when I get to those points where I get stuck and I don't know, I either get so tempted to cheat and just look up the answers, or I just get like frustrated in a way that is not engaging and amusing. And so I will say that puzzle games are not my... And it's the same with jigsaw puzzles. Like, I don't do jigsaw puzzles.
Really?
I don't like them because when I can't figure out where a piece goes, the solution is like walk away and come back a day later, and that feels bad.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not a huge puzzle platformer either, although like I play a lot of Zelda, and they have a lot of like solving puzzles in there. But I remember being a kid and playing like some of the Zeldas and being like, I'm just gonna ask a friend who's done this before because I can't figure this out and I don't want to.
In my D&D campaigns, like one of my because I'm a DM and I run Dungeons and Dragons campaigns a lot, and when I do, one of my like golden rules is that if I ever present the players with a puzzle, there will be an alternate non-puzzle way to solve that. Right?
Like smash it.
You can fight your way through like a town of 14 guards, or you can solve the puzzle and get a magic item that'll make things easier, but you don't have to. Yeah. Because having to solve puzzles is something that I can't.
And part of this would be if there was just the door.
Yeah.
Every room you walk in, like, you can solve this room, or you can take this door right
just
here.
Walk through the door, and you're like...
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's an accessibility thing, too.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
it is.
But I don't know if that would be true about Portal,
brains.
so we'll see.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what you think of it.
We'll see what I think about Portal.
Because I think there are sort of the checkpoints that you like about roguelikes. There are some of that. There is some of that. Grammar.
Yeah. Or like MMOs have the same thing.
But not as much. Maybe?
No matter what you do, if you're playing the MMO at all, you usually progress in some
you
fashion.
keep some stuff, yeah. But I'm thinking about what we talked about, like it being a single screen, because like the original platformers were a single screen, but you were still, like Mario or Donkey Kong and Popeye. You guys ever played Popeye from 1982?
No, how's it?
Never heard of that.
It is brutal.
Like Lion King?
No. It's objectively well made.
Oh, okay.
Like it is like it's well coded, and it wasn't a bad game at the time. It is now, but you're platforming around. You're trying to get items and save olive oil. Yep. Yeah, but Brutus is brutal. Like he will come down from his little post and just freaking smash you. So like it's really hard to avoid him because he moves faster than you, and your controls are kind of clunky. So man, I remember playing that in like an arcade bar that they had in Cincinnati, and I was just like
getting fed up with it.
It was the only game that no one was playing. I understood. It was very, very hard. But also a single screen. You're just moving around trying to avoid Brutus and like grabbing stuff.
Right.
But then we transition to multi-screen, and we see Mario's, and then we have this evolution of going from, not evolution, but like Sonic. And Sonic was a huge thing when it came out, not only because it was the Mario competitor from Sega, but because Mario was, you can do Mario really fast.
Right.
But you're supposed to understand, okay, I have to jump from here to here and jump here, and you're supposed to play it a couple times, so the next time you do that level, you know that cloud is going to fall as soon as you touch it. Right? Mm-hmm. Sonic, you're supposed to go fast.
Go fast.
Gotta go fast. Right? That's the motto. So they created this new game where not only you're going fast, but it was also like one of the fastest loading games. It was a very like impressive technical achievement.
Smooth.
Yeah, because things are loading faster than they do in Mario because you're going faster with Sonic, right? So it's a huge thing. So Sonic versus Mario, I was gonna say apologists, but that's not the right word. But like the people who prefer one or the other, the whole thing about Sonic is like it's cooler because it's faster. There's more pixels on screen and they load faster, right? So it was the first debate between like graphical prowess versus traditional game kind of thing. So that was the most modern thing out there for a while, and then not that we got this afterwards, but then we had an evolution of platformers with combat. So Castlevania, right?
I do like Castlevania.
I thought for a minute that I had played that too, but I just watched the show.
The show is
fantastic. The show's amazing, though.
The listener out there, if you haven't watched the show,
the Netflix one,
I know at least one of them has because my girlfriend loves that show and it's amazing, so good. But yeah, so Castlevania is a huge IP. It's a huge intellectual property, a huge series, and it transitioned from 2D to 3D with middling success. It didn't do super well in 3D, but it was great in 2D. So all the remakes of Castlevania you can think of are the 2D games, not the 3D games. The best version of a 3D game you can get for Castlevania is Dead Cells. Have you guys heard of this game?
I've heard of it. We should play it.
It's a roguelike. No, you should play it.
I really want to play it.
But they have a Castlevania collaboration where, like, Trevor, I believe one of the Belmonts shows up, and
it's nice.
a whole cool thing, yeah. And then you had, Metroid, which is puzzle platformer, because you're solving puzzles that you can't solve unless you do it multiple times. And you have to beat monsters. And depending on the one you play, there is a monster that shows up. So if you play Dread, this happened, which is a new one. And if you play, I forget which Metroid it is, but there's a clone robot cyborg Samus that if they show up in your screen, they will murder you if they see you. So you have to like be still and like hide behind things. So it was an interesting mechanic they brought in as well. But what we're saying here is a puzzle platformer. It sounds simple, but there's so many clever things that people have done, and that's why there's still puzzle platformer games today. Like people still make these, right? They're still fun, like Hollow Knight. Or Celeste.
I like Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
Hollow Knight is
but
not
I'm
a puzzle platformer.
So
it's a
hard.
platformer, excuse me, yeah. And then Celeste, which is also a platformer, which is like,
that's great.
Yeah, it's like an indie,
it's so
indie
cute.
game, yeah.
It's adorable and dark at
and
the
the
same
music.
time.
Yes.
Oh.
So this kind of like, we had this evolution of different 2D games, platformers, and then we became, and I have here, this is like my favorite phrase, it's when 2D games jumped to 3D, it was like Y2K. Okay?
Will this be the end of gaming?
Yeah, everyone was like, computers are going to reset, it's going to be year zero, nukes are going to fly around. When we went from 2D to 3D from the N64, people were like, how are you possibly going to make a Zelda game in 3D? That is impossible. And then they made one like, oh, wait, this is made better, actually.
Yeah.
Oh,
there's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many really realistic. Have you guys played Death Stranding?
Yes.
I've seen.
Well, I watched the playthrough. Yeah.
Yep.
Because I don't know if I want to be a mailman. For like 60 hours, but
it's
I did
beautiful
enjoy watching.
Though. It's beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful.
So,
and you could have Death Stranding
played it
2D, right? It could be a 2D game where you're like platforming around things and like have to evade the monsters.
It'd be bad.
So I'm curious now. So if Portal is a 3D platformer, what other games are in that category? 3D platformers.
Well,
Mario 64. Games. Yeah, all the new Mario games. Odyssey.
All the new Sonic games.
Anything. I know the racing ones, and that's all I know.
Yeah, so Mario 64, Odyssey, Galaxy, and then you have Sonic, the GameCube Sonics, starting with the GameCube Sonics. I don't know.
I can kind of imagine that.
I can't.
There's a new one that's always like popping up on my feed. It's like a little witch game where you're a witch and you fly around. Somebody in the Magic Coast, but you're a witch and you fly around through these different islands and jump on various platforms to make them happen.
Yeah, so is it a very common genre.
Yeah.
It's
subsection.
It's ubiquitous, but niche in that I don't think there's like that many released per year, but the ones that are released are immensely popular.
Wait,
yes.
Robot Rainbow Unicorn Attack.
That is a platform.
That is a platform.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speedrun.
Yeah.
So I guess I just don't hear about them for some reason.
Yeah, it's because so if you're going to release a AAA platform that's not called Mario or Sonic, it probably won't work.
Okay.
Yeah, because people want those IPs, right? So, but a good example of a platform that did really well and it's like smallish is Astrobot, which is the PlayStation's new mascot, Sony PlayStation Company new mascot, and it's a platformer made to help you understand how like the controls work on a PS5 or the original one. I believe it was a PlayStation Move / a PS4. But so they use a lot of the new triggers, all that new stuff, but it's actually like really fun and really well made.
Tutorial.
Yeah, so you're in this tiny world. It's kind of like islands in the sky, and you're jumping between them and finding things, right? So it is not as popular as it used to be, and part of that is because games at the time had to look like that. Like if you're going to make a game, you're either making a top-down action-adventure game or you're making a side-scrolling platformer. That's what you had, right? And that's why we had like, okay, how are we going to do this 2D to 3D? How are we going to do something like Zelda in 3D? We can't. Oh, look at that. They are better than ever. No, how are we going to make Mario in 3D? Oh, wait, Mario 64 is a masterpiece. Right?
There's not quite a full platformer. It's more of like a runner-style game. The famous one that came out on mobile that got a lot of traction recently is Temple Run. Where you're like running in 3D and then you're jumping across little gaps and bridges and
it's not it's a runner because they're not actually jumping up, but it's the same core mechanic,
it's
right?
3D.
Yeah.
Mirror's Edge.
I have played that
Mirror's
too.
Edge. What's that new one that came out that's like you're supposed to speedrun and it's like a first person thing? I think we should eventually try to play this game, but I'm gonna remember it later. But it's basically the level is supposed to last 2 minutes, and you're platforming between things and also shooting demons. Basically, you're in heaven shooting demons.
It's 3D?
It's 3D. Yeah.
I don't know.
I can't even think a little bit of the name right now, but it like was on contention for a bunch of like different awards. Yeah. It's an indie game as well. But then we moved from this. But it's interesting. All the ones we're bringing up here have like these really stylized graphics.
Yeah, right? Mirror's Edge is another gorgeous game, which is what attracted me to it. The same friend was like, "It's so pretty."
So what is Mirror's Edge?
I didn't play that much of it because it was too hard for me.
Yeah, it is
but
notoriously difficult.
The graphics were gorgeous, kind of minimalist in a Portal-ish way, but gritty and
it's all very clean.
It's very parkour.
Right? Yes.
Like you're balancing on stuff, running walls, and jumping. And
so that is.
I don't remember if there was much. If there was fighting. Is it a shooter game?
I think so. Yeah.
I think
there must have been.
Yeah.
But
that was the part I was the worst at.
There's a good segue here where it's parkouring, and then we transition to Assassin's Creed. That is not a platformer, but a lot of the game is done by platforming things.
Yeah, so what kind of happens with a lot of platformers is you have these platforms, and then when you get advanced enough, you fill out the rest of the environment.
And it doesn't feel like
and it doesn't feel platforming anymore, because you get that with like Super Mario Sunshine too, where the town is so well filled out that even though it was a platformer, it almost feels less like it now.
Because you're exploring.
Like sidewalks and so some of the platforming nature of it comes from the fact that the graphics could only do so much, which is why you see less of them now, or you see weird gimmicks to get you back to that platforming. So like Super Mario Galaxy shoots you off to different planets, and therefore there's a bunch of space that you can platform through.
Yeah, so it's still a platform, but it's not as traditional as like you load in. There are literal things in the air, right? It's more of an organic situation. So
it's like Assassin's Creed, like true platformer, some middle Assassin's Creedy thing, and then like the open world.
Because these
is that the spectrum?
Kind of, because these large games have elements of other genres in them, right? Which is why
you get to the big AAA games, and it all like blends together, and they say do everything.
Because video game genres are insane. They are like you can. There are several games that are categorized by like 7 words to describe the genre, and it's very hard to keep track. But Assassin's Creed it's not a platformer, but the way you move around the world is by parkouring, which is essentially platforming, right? Same with Prince of Persia, which inspired Assassin's Creed, is a lot of.
Prince of Persia is pretty close to a platformer.
Yes, exactly, but it's not the cutesy aesthetic we usually associate with having a platformer, right? So, Tomb Raider has platforming things. Zelda has platforming. Like you have to solve puzzles by jumping in different parts and shooting an arrow here and then jumping over here and shooting an arrow, right? So.
Well, that's why like I feel like now platformers are almost relegated to indie games because when you get
pure platformers,
because when you get back down to that like base level tech, then you start to see the pure platforms coming back. Whereas like we said, when you get to like Zelda Breath of the Wild, they can do a little bit of everything. So they just do a little bit of everything, and we just get to call it an open world AAA.
Yeah, because you have to jump around, you can climb, you can do all this stuff,
right.
but there's platforming elements, right? We don't usually necessarily focus on that because there's so much other stuff, but there's stuff in there too. And then we have things with like clever spins, so like Celeste, which has a double jump, and the second jump has like a boost.
Super Meat Boy.
Right? Super Meat Boy. You have rhythm platformers, where you're supposed to be platforming to the rhythm, and depending on when you hit one of the platforms, it'll launch you higher up or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Doodle Jump?
Doodle Jump. It's a platformer.
Vertical platformer.
Vertical platformer.
Is that one like ski slope game where you draw on the
Line Rider?
ski slope? Yeah. Is
Line
that a
Rider's
platformer?
Fantastic. I would say that's more of a creation because you could create like a creation-based game because you could create a platformer for
once,
little guy.
Once it's going,
you're not controlling it anymore.
Yeah.
You can create a platform game in there
for sure
for your little guy to do, but your little penguin.
Because I will say, like we said earlier, I think there is an aspect of like agility that is like baked into what makes a platform.
Yeah.
Right. Like you are good at a platformer because you're good at reacting very quickly to jumping on tiny little things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you're not actually pressing the buttons or doing that, some of that platformingness is lost to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't think Line Rider is more of a creation. It's like it's not like SimCity, but it's the same kind of thing, right? Where things happen without you.
A builder.
You create things. A builder, exactly. You create things, then things happen.
Right.
And then you create things, and things happen. Or a platformer is you're the one jumping.
Flappy Bird.
Flappy Bird.
Flappy Bird.
I remember Flappy Bird.
Flappy Bird. Are you saying it's a platformer, maybe?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Like Flappy Bird, because it's almost the inverse, right?
You're not supposed to touch things.
You're trying to dodge.
It's like a reverse platformer.
It's a runner. Yeah. It's a reverse platformer.
A reverse platformer because you cannot touch the
platforms are lava. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Interesting. Flappy Bird. I played a lot.
It does operate under the same ideas, though. Like it's how accurately
they're creating
can you tap
the path by creating platforms you can't touch.
You can't touch.
Which is the other way around. That's interesting.
And I was also thinking it because Flappy Bird was notoriously difficult.
Flappy Bird is hard.
So much so that the creator got a bunch of death threats because there are a bunch of children on the internet apparently, and so he just straight up canceled the
Flappy
game.
Bird. Oh man, I love that Flappy Bird icon.
Yeah.
It came in 2013.
It's a decade ago.
Yep.
But you last. It still exists in arcades.
It's technically, I guess that makes sense. It's side scroller, right? But it's funny because we call platformers side scrollers automatically, but this one is just a side scroller because it's not platforming.
We're not platforming. It's just a side scroller.
Because like now there are no more platformers that aren't side scroller or that have more than one arena, right? There's no more platforming that's just Donkey Kong style in one arena. It
doesn't exist.
Well, indie games like that exist, but there's no like game based with that.
Anymore.
At least what I'm seeing on that wiki page suggests that actually he canceled it because the game was addictive. I'd heard it was because he was getting like death threats.
Could be both.
Yeah.
But here he was in 2014 he was making $50K a day.
Just from like
Flappy Bird
app purchases.
Yep.
Oh, this game was everywhere when I was in college. Like
I must
for
have
like
been
a year it was
too
out.
ads and app purchases. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. $50K a day for January of 2014. It's a whole month of $50K a day.
What a life.
We gotta make an app.
There's your undergrad research initiative.
Goodness gracious. Oh, Amelia, I wanted to bring something up here. You said you read a book, which
same book that I mentioned earlier.
Tomorrow
from the Tournament of Books.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zavin, I think is the author. And
what's the premise of the
so it's basically two main characters, Sam and Drat. I forgot. I just read it like a week ago.
Sam and Drat?
Sadie and Sam, they meet as like 10, 11-year-olds. They're playing Oregon Trail and Mario and whatever, nonstop, and they bond. And then they grow up and they go to MIT and Harvard, respectively, and they reconnect after like a falling out.
Other colleges are available.
True
Not in
that.
the certain movies.
But she's actually studying games at MIT and learning to make them in 1995, I guess.
Yeah, one of the first places. Yeah, one of the first places to have Game Lab was.
Yeah,
MIT.
I wasn't sure how
historically
accurate it was, but yeah, there's lots of cool references to old 80s, 90s games. But she starts making games, and then her friend is like, "Oh, you're making games? Let's like make a game together." And he, during their childhood, had drawn his thing was drawing mazes and making them harder and harder and giving them to her, and she would solve them or not or whatever. And at one point, Sam, that character, makes a comment that all games are just mazes when you boil it down.
Oh, John doesn't like
Get out of here, Sam. Sorry.
You don't agree, huh?
No.
Read the book, see what you think.
All right.
There's lots of other drama that happens,
well,
and it's a really touching book. But yeah, the idea that all games are mazes, I can see it in all the games that we just mentioned.
I can kind of see it as well.
You're trying to get from point A to point
I can see it in the 80s,
B.
sure. Maybe when that's all we did. But.
And yeah, now maybe like you were saying with your D&D group, you create multiple paths.
Depends
or
how
even
you
my favorite
only
maze.
so many paths.
My favorite game, Magic, is just not a maze. You're playing against 4 other people. There's not a point A, point B. There's a constant battle and push and tug between them.
The point A is 40 health. The point B is 0 health.
Yeah, okay. If we're being reductivist in all cases, then yeah, every game is just an on-off switch. You either have it on or off.
I can't disagree with you.
That's a nonsensical argument.
Civilization 5.
Yeah, it's not a maze.
It's not a maze so much as it's diplomacy.
Yeah.
But aren't you trying to work your way through several different situations?
No, because even if we were to use this ridiculous
then it gets
metaphor
very
of the
metaphysical.
Yeah, even if we were going to use this ridiculous metaphor of the maze, it would be a constantly shifting maze where your opponents simultaneously have control of the ends and the beginnings, and you can knock down walls.
That sounds
at that point,
awesome.
It's not a maze
an
at that
extra
point.
complex maze.
No, at that point, everything is an extra complex game of
I feel like at that point,
you know what? I think we have to really break it down, begin at the beginning here. Well, what is life?
Get out of here, Sam. Get out of here with your maze analogies.
Well, I mean, I get the sense in the book that he's talking about video games.
And they're all, I think, talking about games in the sense that they're all a problem to solve.
And yeah, that's the...
If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail,
We've been
Sam.
calling...
I think it's not necessarily... It's reductionist, but it's more of a philosophical thing where, all games are a problem to solve. Soccer is the problem, is solving the defense to score. Mm-hmm. Video games, even Hades, is figuring out how not to get hit and hit more, right? So
sometimes there's games of creation where you're just making a thing of beauty and it's aesthetic. There's no problem to solve.
Is it a game then?
Oh yeah, Minecraft's definitely a game. You can play that one to the end.
Yes, I agree, but then you're solving the problem of how to structure this thing in this space.
Only because you defined that as a problem. Yeah, if you define that as a problem, then it becomes a problem.
And that's part of the game.
But it doesn't have to be. I could blindly place things and see where they get placed, and it would still be a beautiful game. The minute I create a problem and then solve it, everything becomes a problem and solution, but only because you've looked at it with that epistemological lens. You've said, this is how I'm structuring my reality, and therefore everything conforms to that reality. That's a problem with taxonomies.
If you reject that there are problems to be solved and just mindlessly place your Minecraft cubes,
then you deconstruct that.
Is that its own problem? The problem of I'm spending some time doing nothing, and
if we're going to reduce games as far as we can go, then the only thing that makes a game is that it is fun and enjoyable. Because a game is, by definition,
life is a game.
Fun and enjoyable.
Oh, we answered the question.
Okay, so
what is life?
What we're brushing up against here is what Wittgenstein calls the problem of perfect definitions. We went over this in my philosophy classes. Basically, what John has just done is he has tried to lay out the rules for a game, but Amelia immediately caught on to the counter argument, which is that life, by John's definition, is now a game.
Only if I have fun.
Dinner is also a game.
Dinner could be a
However,
game.
we wouldn't want to say that those things are game. And the problem that we're going to run into here is we're going to try to lawyer this to come up with a definition that only fits the things we want to call games and doesn't fit any of the things we don't want to call games. And then some smart aleck philosophy professor is going to immediately point out a shortcoming.
There's always holes you can poke. And that's the problem with taxonomies.
That's my problem with taxonomies.
Taxonomies are always
if you
limited.
have a taxonomy and you say everything is a maze, I'm going to tell you no.
Okay, to be fair, it says all games are basically mazes. Not mazes, not 100%. But I would say my definition of a game is anything that disagrees with John.
You're allowing John to be like the anti-arbiter of gamehood then.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Anything that John likes, I think we should dislike.
Well,
on principle.
That's just my brother. You just agree with my brother.
That's true. You're right, which I don't want to do, so you're right.
We have to be careful.
I'm caught between a rock and a hard place.
We gotta be careful. John likes us, breathing, living, and dogs.
Does he?
We don't want to ditch all those things.
Does he like us?
I didn't know you were such like a misanthrope. Otherwise.
Me? I like I'm not a misanthrope. I enjoy everything. I just don't like mazes. That's the key part of it.
Okay, so that's why he doesn't want it. That's why he doesn't want the game to be mazes. He doesn't like mazes.
Going back to Portal, like we were talking about Portal.
Right.
Portal as a puzzle game.
Yes.
This is a
and it is, but I like problem solving better as a term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
You are solving this complex problem. How do I get this button to do the thing, to open the door, to whatever?
Yeah. Right.
I don't know if that makes it more palatable to you to talk about it as problem solving instead of puzzle solving.
It does.
I think it makes it less palatable to me.
Does it?
Yeah.
To been a maze?
And maybe that's the beauty of...
Yeah, I think so. Because a maze, I know there's an end eventually. Problem solving feels like if you can't solve the problem, there's no end.
I guess for me, at my very...
But if you can't solve the maze, there's no end either, right?
Well, but there is a solution. Like, for me...
Even if you don't get there.
Even if I don't get there. But the problem solving is like, if I don't see the solution, it means that like I might never see it because I can't figure it out.
Exist.
The maze, it's out there. I know it doesn't make any sense. Brendan's looking
Unless
at me like
it's
I'm
one
crazy.
of these ultra complex mazes where everyone's moving.
Well, that's my thing with mazes.
That'd be a fun game,
for
by
me,
the way.
I guess the problem with the metaphor of a maze is a maze assumes there was an ultimate creator, and that the creator knows the end, and that you are trying to reach the end the creator has predestined. And some of the best games,
podcast, John.
I know, and the best games in my mind don't have that.
Don't have that?
And the best games in my mind are the ones that are like Magic, that are played against each other, and you don't know where. Because I firmly believe that Magic is one of the best games of all time. But
wow, shocker!
I know,
yes.
right?
New information.
But even outside of Magic, like a game of Civilization, right?
Yeah.
Where like when it's co-created together and the actual objective of the game exists in a post-structural place, where we don't know what the end goal is until we start playing the game. That's peak gaming. Where we create this together.
Perhaps I'm more excited about Portal 2, which can be a co-op experience. Because my girlfriend and I love doing co-op games, so that can be really fun.
And mazes as a metaphor don't allow for that. Because if we take it as a hard metaphor, again, we can soften the metaphor until it works. But if we take it as a hard metaphor, a maze has an end that somebody else has created.
Like, I wonder what you'll think of Portal 2 then. Because, the co-op part of Portal 2 is still a maze. It's still a puzzle.
Yeah.
You just have to co-op it.
You can work it together. I do like co-op games over single player usually.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering about the maze thing though, partially because one of my problems...
We're still in the maze.
One of my problems is that the way to solve a maze, and this is why hand-drawn mazes always suck, is you just start at the end and work backwards. Whereas, like, in a video game... You can't do that, which does make it more effective. Certainly, like Resident Evil 4, I would say, like fits a maze.
It's a maze
pretty well, right? And you can't see the end, so you can't reason backwards.
It's on rails, and there's only one ending that you're trying to get to.
It's kind of right, but it's like also open world ish, right, with limits. But then the other thing I'm thinking of is like in Portal, it kind of is a maze in that you don't really know where you are, and you're navigating your way through this. But it's very much on rails.
Yeah,
right?
it is linear.
Yeah.
And there's not very often choices of direction.
Well, and that's why I said I think like Sam's opinion in the 80s is maybe valid. Because if I think of all the games that existed in the mid-80s, they were all mazes, for sure.
Yeah. Read the book. It's really good.
I'm going to go home, I'm going to read it.
And check out the Tournament of Books. But yeah, I'm thinking back to the plot of the novel, and they start a game company, and they're successful, etc., and they ultimately get into building MMOs and like big old like giant Stardew Valley
fun fact about MIT, they actually what is considered the first video game ever is from MIT. It's called Space War, and I said it like that because there's an exclamation mark at the end.
Naturally.
So it's not Space War, it's Space War. And it's just they made it on like an old like tracking like radar computer, and it's just there's a gravity well in the middle, like represented by a pixel. And then like there's two different pixels that are your ships, and you're getting pulled by this gravity well, so you're constantly moving, but you can like alter your orbit a little bit and try to shoot each other down. And there's like meteors. Yeah, so it's only co-op, which is an interesting thing to think about how games began as co-op because they had to. There's no way of putting a computer player in there. There's no memory for that, right?
Yeah, and I guess that harkens back to like.
Well, is that competitive? Are you shooting each other down?
Yes.
Most analog games are like you play with a friend or family.
Shooting each other down
unless it's
before
solitaire.
one of you gets. Sure. For when you're playing against yourself and it's intense. Shooting each other down before you get to the sucked into the gravity well, because you're like you start out here and you start moving closer and closer and closer and faster, like around the middle, right?
So you'd call that a co-op too, just because it's 2 player?
I'd call that a competitive.
2 player.
Co-op.
Well, sorry, not co-op, but it's a
cooperative. Cooperative.
It's a 2-player game. But co-op, I meant like there's more than one person playing, right?
Gotcha. Definitions.
So.
That's this podcast. Definitions of the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh god.
The professors try to define everything. So we have a couple more things before we get to our closing arguments, if we're going to try to lawyer this up. So what are our strategies going in? I can tell you that my strategy is going in trying not to get frustrated, but knowing full well that I will get frustrated. Yeah.
It's likely.
Yeah.
Do you have rules like? Are you allowed to cheat? Like, if you get real stuck, can you Google it?
Absolutely.
You can. We're just gonna shame each other.
What if we make a rule that you don't?
Well, I like that, but also I don't like that for 2 reasons. One, I'm gonna get angry, and 2, we have to finish these games.
I guess that's true.
We've already had 3 games that Brandon hasn't finished, so he's really got to like
3?
2 games. Sorry. Brandon hasn't finished, so he's really got it.
Yeah, Mr. Exaggeration.
Yeah, he increased it by like, what, 33%?
33%.
Exactly, yeah.
Absurd.
Well, Portal 1 is short, thank goodness.
Yes. So
even though it took me 6+ months.
Yeah, but you were playing half-hour increments, which is a type of gaming, right?
I play an hour a day when we're playing these games. I usually try to do like 1 hour every night before I go to bed. That's like my downtime.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to try to do something similar. I was doing that with Hades as well. I was doing like 1 run, which is basically 45 minutes a day.
But I do promise if I cheat, it will not be until week 6.
Yeah, so we do face one major problem this week, though.
And?
The Resident Evil 4 remake is coming out on Friday.
Gross.
It does, though.
That sounds like a major problem for you?
Yes.
It's only a problem if you make it a problem.
Here's comes the game.
Minecraft philosophy.
Oh, it's definitely a problem. I've already played the demo. Like,
we're going to be done with this game by the next episode. So,
like, you're far-ish into it already.
Yeah.
A third.
I'm pretty confident about finishing Portal 1. Knock on wood. Portal 2 is where I start to.
Yeah, Portal 2. I am still stuck.
But that's because you didn't cheat. Look up. I don't think looking up is cheating. I think that's a bad stereotype about that. But anyway, you didn't look anything up.
I did actually. So when I started playing last week during spring break, I played most of Portal 1. I think I'm like 2 levels away from the end. Nice. And then I went to Portal 2 and I was like, where even did I leave off? So I've played the co-op many times with many people. It's excellent. It's not that frustrating because you have a friend to be frustrated with you and you figure it out. But the campaign, I have no idea where I am or which direction I'm supposed to be facing or what is happening. So I tried rewinding a little, like going back to a save or 2 back. Still, and then I did look up the Gamma Bay. Gamma something was the name of it. And I still couldn't figure out. Nothing in the playthrough with the walkthrough was matching to what I was. Oof. And so I have no idea. Still have no idea where I am. Maybe I need to start over.
Maybe.
I don't know.
There's a whole there's an interesting movement in game design for including Xenoblade Chronicles does this really well. Mm-hmm. For including like a piece of code in there that says like if your player hasn't played this in 5 hours, 12 hours, 20 days, when you get back in, they give you some of the tutorials again.
Nice.
The Witcher has that.
Yeah, so they teach you
and I think
you haven't played this in a while. Remember, this is the attack that you use to combo with this attack, kind of thing.
I don't know if I would like that with Portal 2.
I think I would like that with. Well, interesting. I think I would like that with most games.
But I can see it working.
I can't remember if it is The Witcher, but one of them calls it like real adult mode, and it like jokes. It's like if you're a real adult that like has to do other things in addition to play.
Literally,
you might need this.
I think it had been 3 years.
Yeah, so you need stuff that'll like it has thresholds in there that like however much time you miss, it'll give you tutorials again.
Yeah.
Right.
Huh.
which I think is an interesting piece of game design that maybe like 10 years ago would have been shunned, right? Because you feel like, if you don't remember what you're doing,
but now we're all
die.
Real adults.
Now we're real adults.
Yeah. So do you have any hints for us that aren't spoilers, Amelia?
Think outside the box. Like, it's a puzzle game, so it rewards that sort of lateral thinking.
Okay.
Be patient. Be patient. Be patient with yourself. And the GLaDOS talking at you is really funny. So
listen,
the patience and that dovetail pretty nicely. So
okay.
If you're taking your time through it, even though it is a pretty quick game, 3 hours or so.
If you're good, yeah.
And that's my trouble is I figure out the puzzle, what needs to happen, and then the execution is it surprised me. The one thing that's still my downfall is trying to walk in a straight line with the little key commands.
In real life?
No, as a game.
You're playing on PC?
Can I walk? Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I'm playing on the Switch.
The one time that I
well.
get out my mouse and play Portal. But half the time my fingers get onto the wrong keys, and then I'm hitting the wrong things, and then I cannot aim for the life of me to walk. Sometimes it's really important, when there are toxic slime puddles. So.
Yeah, interesting.
So the execution is what slows me down. I've gotten a lot better though. I burned through most of the game in about 2 hours, I think.
I promise that I will not cheat until the day before we do our next podcast. So I will try. If I'm stuck on it for 2 weeks, I will try to be stuck.
I applaud, admire your sentiment. But I think that you should, if you get stuck on a level in Portal 1,
just frustrated.
You should figure that out before it's the day before. You have to have played Portal 2.
No. All right, yeah. All right, I'm just gonna look it up. If I get really frustrated.
In the next 2 weeks, we are vowing to finish Portal 1.
Portal 1, and maybe if you have time, I'm gonna do a start Portal 2.
Start Portal 2. Yeah. Taste test Portal 2.
Yes, exactly. So we can, because usually our second episode for all our diehard fans out there, we have a review of our first impressions of the game. But this time, since we're doing 2 games, we're going to review the first game and our first impressions of how the second game compares to the first one, perhaps.
Correct.
Yes, which could be interesting. So, we have talked about a lot of things today, not necessarily all about Portal, but a lot of pixels of depth, a lot of definitions. That was our primer on Portal, the video game, with feat guest Dr. Amelia Chesley, another professor. That is the esteemed
Dr. Amelia Chesley.
Esteemed.
Yeah.
Esteemed. Yeah.
Why not?
What is the emeritus?
There it is.
I'm not there yet. I'm not that old.
So, we talked about, our plan is to play Portal 1 and Portal 2, finish Portal 1, hopefully start Portal 2 in the next few weeks. We'll have first impressions and review the first game. So thanks again for joining us here at Professor's Play, the show in which you can get just a pixel or several pixels today of deep thinking with your video game discussions. I'm Professor Phil Chavot. He's Professor John Adams. He's Professor Brendan West. She's Professor Amelia Chesley. And together, we are professors who play video games. See y'all in a couple weeks.